really close to a tipping point.
In Detroit, we have to grapple with the fact that we have 24 square miles of vacant land across the city, and not all of that is going to be built development. Some of it has to be green space.
It goes up to 120, 125, maybe even 130 degrees in those upper floors of some of those buildings.
That is the goal of this project, is to get all these corals and make the reefs down in the Keys pristine again.
I've got a bunch of solar panels on my house. Are they reliable?
Green Mountain mailed me a check for $142.80. When was the last time the electric company paid you?
Temperatures are higher, and that causes those respiratory illnesses, the heat exhaustion and stroke.
Greenery is proven that it helps an activity and being active and going out for walks and being able to see greenery.
It's going to be much cooler because that heat isn't lingering in that pavement like it is with the traditional black asphalt.
I'm super excited about our future.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Solutionaries. Here we highlight the creative problem solvers in communities who are working to make things better. Today's show hits a topic that affects all of us. We're talking about climate change. It is a huge issue with a lot to tackle. Our Solutionaries team is growing, and for the first time, we'll bring you reports literally from around the country. Graham Media Group stations from Florida, Texas, Michigan, and Virginia have been working to showcase the people trying to solve climate-related issues from all over. Issues like solar energy. Is it worth switching from your conventional power sources? Is it cheaper? Does it actually help the environment? And the coral reefs. 95% of Florida's reefs have been attacked by a deadly disease. So what now? Find out how you can help later on in the show. But first, heat islands. Too much pavement and not enough green spaces in our cities. It is a big problem causing environmental issues, health concerns, and in extreme cases, even death. But solutions are out there to a lot of climate-related issues. With any problem, including heat islands, you have to recognize that the problem exists before you can create change. And many people have. In Roanoke, Virginia, a partnership has taken the reins for creating a healthier community. Solutionaries correspondent Jenna Zipton is standing by in Roanoke. And Jenna, tell us a little bit about the study that took place back in August of 2020.
Thanks, Lewis. Roanoke now has a heat map of the city, and it shows what many cities have found, that it's up to 15 degrees warmer in overdeveloped areas without a lot of green space.
And Jenna, I understand the methods used to gather data were unusual, but very simple and healthy for the environment.
They used cars, and they also used bikes. Volunteers covered the routes 3 times a day, and those routes were automatically recorded, showing simple is sometimes okay.
Heat issues are more detrimental to people than natural disasters.
Temperatures are higher. That causes those respiratory illnesses, the heat exhaustion and stroke. And we've been noticing with these urban heat islands is it makes it more easy for thunderstorms to develop during the summertime.
We'll see a lot of the issues that cause heat island effect on this street, as we did identify in our report. It's one of the hottest areas, and you'll see there are very few trees. And we're working to amend that, but for right now, this is where we are.
I want to take you over here to the snow because we're talking about urban heat mapping, but really this encompasses all seasons. And this is a great depiction of how asphalt versus park space or green space. So talk to me about the difference we're seeing here.
Well, you don't see any snow here, right? So this is already melted off. And we still have snow over here, which would be sort of more of a natural balance of how this should be being processed and soaked in slowly, being absorbed, doesn't cause any stormwater runoff. So this is a great example of why we want more green space.
In August of 2020, the City of Roanoke and Climate Adaptation Planning Analytics partnered together to create a heat map of the city. Volunteers collected data by car and bicycle. The data collected showed a temperature variation of more than 15 degrees.
Urban heat island effect is what happens when you start to develop areas, particularly with asphalt and streets and roads and buildings, that actually absorb heat and then release it into the atmosphere. They can be up to 15 degrees hotter from a shady street to an area much like we're in now, where there's a lot of development and very little green space.
Temperatures are higher, and that causes those respiratory illnesses, the heat exhaustion and stroke. And then something else that we've been noticing with these urban heat islands is it makes it more easy for thunderstorms to develop during the summertime. And thunderstorms sitting over a big city can cause flooding events. We're here at Raleigh Court Park here in Roanoke, and really interesting to watch as we look out to all the snow. The snow has maybe stuck around for a couple days versus right in downtown Roanoke where it's a little bit hotter. A lot of the snow is already gone, so you can kind of see that even during the wintertime, the urban heat island is still a thing.
So this is one of the nicer areas of Roanoke. People love to live here. This is called the Grandin Village, Raleigh Court area. And it's really walkable. People bike here all the time. You see runners here running all the time. This is going to be an area where it's one of the cooler spots. So when you look at the heat map, it's in the blue tones.
There tends to be, a lot of community housing, old streets, very few parks, abandoned shopping malls, things along those lines. So all those things would add to that urban heat island. And then these are also in our community, people that often don't have air conditioning and find that the heat gets so much worse in their homes because they have poor insulation and also no air conditioning.
So when you look over behind us even, or in front of us right there, you see just the strip. So you have to have strips to divide the parking lot. So if you can make them green,
right,
better.
Right, you often see that in parking lots. And again, given the day that this was built, this wasn't an uncommon concept. And I think we've gotten a little bit better about that in some of our newer developments. But you're right, some strips with the trees to help cool the parking lot. Even parking surfaces can be helpful, if you don't have the opportunity to put trees up, to cover some of that land.
What kinds of things would you add to make it better?
Well, we have some trees over here, so more trees would be a good thing. Any kind of shading actually would be helpful. Also, there's a type of surface that's called a pervious surface. So it would look like this, but it might just be a little more porous and you'd see more openings to allow the water to go through. But not only does the water go through it breaks up that hard surface so that it doesn't have such an intense heat escalation and helps to slow that process as well.
So they just put this bike lane in, less pollution, because more people are using alternative methods of transportation. So they might be biking to work, or they might be biking for exercise or biking to the gym instead of driving to the gym. So I think, unless you have those things, people won't necessarily use them. So the City of Roanoke put up these great explainers because I think green roofs are pretty new. A lot of people don't know about them, and especially if you've been coming down here for a long time, you may be like, what is this? And so thanks to green roofs, it's possible to restore some of the natural ecology even in the heart of the city. And here's where the urban heat island effect comes in. It reduces that, in which hard surfaces absorb and radiate heat back into the atmosphere, resulting in higher temperatures in urban settings. So if you were able to replicate this in multiple places downtown where we are seeing some urban heat, then ideally the temperature would start coming down if we had more green roofs like this. Back to the neighborhoods where urban heat is an issue.
So, neighborhood is a perfect example. We have a lot of houses that are 100 years old, even a little bit older. Those houses didn't have insulation in the walls, still don't have insulation in the roofs, have leaky windows. They weren't really built for air conditioning, but they, in many cases, don't have air conditioning or just have a single room air conditioner. They just really aren't built for the way things are now. So HUD has a program called Healthy Homes. Green and Healthy Homes goes a little bit further, and what we do is we try and leverage different free services that would be available to low-income homeowners to sort of look to see what other services could we provide for them that would maximize their benefit in the least invasive way. So this house is one of those houses.
What are some of the limitations of fixing the problem? Because it sounds like, a lot of those take money, a lot of those take time.
A big thing is, like I mentioned, with the poorer communities, they can't afford to upgrade their air conditioning in their house, make it energy efficient, make it easier for them to cool themselves down. And something that the city told us is a lot of Roanoke's already built out, and they can't, tear things down to put new things in because there's just nowhere for anything to go.
And how do we go about fixing urban heat islands?
So a big thing that we can do is increase the green spaces like here at Raleigh Court Park, and we can plant trees downtown. We can whitewash the asphalt. We can change the roofing on some of these buildings, make it white, make it green, things like that.
There's a couple of things. If you're in the position where you're ready to replace your roof, a lighter roof is a better roof. A green roof is an awesome thing. That's not something everybody can do, but that's probably the best roof of all. Again, those porous surfaces as opposed to the hard surfaces. So, sometimes a gravel or a paver driveway is better than an asphalt driveway or a concrete driveway. Anything you can do to promote shade, promote green space are all good things to do. My job has been completely dedicated to sustainability for 20 years. And the difference in the public attitude and understanding and comprehension of what it is we're talking about is amazing. It's really rewarding. And I feel like the next generation is just that much further ahead of us. So I'm super excited about our future. I feel really good about it. Some people are never going to agree, and that's okay. They don't really have to. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but there's also a bigger picture that we all need to be aware of, and I think our youth that's going to be more important to them even than it has been to my generation.
So informative. Jenna, thank you. You can learn a lot more about urban heat mapping on our website, solutionariesnetwork.com.
You can have all the buildings in the world, but if there's no oxygen for the people, you're going to have some empty buildings.
We're using too much fossil fuels, and our carbon emissions are going to make the sea levels rise.
We need to put more emphasis, on pitting up trees.
Being in Florida, if the ocean levels rise a certain amount, the coasts are going to be flooded, and that's a serious issue, especially for people living on the coast like we do.
Pick up your trash, consume less meat, and I don't know about you guys, but I want to live a long, healthy life on a healthy planet. So if you care about that, then simply do the small things to help the environment. It's not hard at all.
We just got to be better people. That's what I think we got to do.
Moving over to San Antonio, where the heat is no joke. Summer temperatures exceed 90 degrees most days and can exceed 100 degrees frequently. That combined with a sprawling city means urban heat islands exist in full force in South Texas. The city of San Antonio and the University of Texas, San Antonio made it their mission to solve issues related to heat and the heat island effect with a creative approach to pavement. Solutionaries correspondent Sarah Acosta helps us understand how the Alamo City is beating the heat.
They keep absorbing. So the temperature, there's not temperature swing between the day and night. It's always hot.
If you have grass surfaces, tree canopies, that is absorbed and released through evapotranspiration, so it's not as big of a factor in terms of heating the neighborhood.
So it's very clear the northern part of the city has more greenery and the southern part has more asphalt.
The hot spots are on the east side and the west side of downtown. Those are the most severe, probably because of less tree canopy, more pavement coverage. And so we also know that those are the most vulnerable communities as well. So we worked with our Office of Equity to look at the equity matrix, and those census tracts are most impacted based on poverty levels and percentage of people of color.
Certain parts of the city can be 15 degrees cooler versus some of these other vulnerable parts because they don't have that tree coverage. Well, trees, some of those trees have been here for like 100+ years. There are these huge oak trees that are providing that temperature difference, and those trees are not going to grow overnight, and that greenery is not going to grow overnight. So I was like, oh, well, this seems like an easy first step we can take in some of those communities that are really suffering from these urban heat islands.
In terms of what cool pavement is, it's a different type of material. It's slightly more reflective.
Our product goes down on an asphalt surface and reflects about 45% of the sun's rays. And instead of retaining that heat all day, we're reflecting it. We like to kind of describe that it's got the look of a concrete street, and you get a lot of the cooling benefits of a concrete surface without a lot of the cost.
When I started looking into it, they showed actual data that research had been done in Phoenix and also in Los Angeles. So I was like, oh, this actually might work. They have solid data on it.
LA and Phoenix, they've proven that it works well. It's effective at reflecting the heat, cooling down the neighborhoods. Well, the next steps would be for San Antonio is to take it to scale, install it all throughout one neighborhood, and then move to another neighborhood where they're located in more of like hot spots in the most vulnerable communities.
Some pedestrians feel like when they're walking on these streets with this new reflective, cooler pavement, they themselves feel hotter. And that's where I think we need to have more research.
We're trying to keep that heat from being trapped in. We've got to make that heat escape somewhere. And so it's reflected from that surface and back into the atmosphere. So you are going to experience some of that energy reflected back up, but as opposed to the alternative where you've got all that trapped into that surface and it's just slowly just lingering there throughout the course of the day. But overall, your whole experience is going to be that it's going to be much cooler because that heat isn't lingering in that pavement like it is with a traditional black asphalt.
Greenery is proven that it helps an activity and being active and going out for walks and being able to see greenery.
I think it's important that we make sure that those vulnerable communities that are having these urban heat island effects that can be 15 degrees warmer than other parts of the city have that same access to greenery. And if not, the city provides them with tools to combat that heat.
Sarah, thank you. In addition to the environmental benefits, the EPA claims that cooler pavements can also lower tire noise and create better nighttime visibility. But the big plus is bringing the temperatures down. Now, when we talk about heat, we're talking, of course, about the sun, our source of light, our source of warm summer days, and also a powerful source of energy. Coming up, solar power. Is it time to make the switch? We've all seen solar panels on the side of the road, on top of buildings, including houses. There's no question that the technology works. But how much better for the environment is it in the fight against climate change? How much could it save you?
Do you mind if I ask you how much this deal cost you?
It cost almost $60,000.
And do you think that's money well spent?
I think it is money well spent. I think it'll pay for itself.
I'm not so much in favor of solar energy for helping the environment because it actually costs quite a bit of money.
I'm all for it, especially discounts. Hello.
Anything that can help the community and help us breathe better is a win-win.
They probably don't save as much on helping the environment as you might think they do.
Energy, I could just get my energy from the solar panels and save a lot of money. Hell yeah. That's a no-brainer.
Solar. Many are intrigued, but is it the right move for you? Homeowners and businesses are buying into solar energy more and more these days. According to the Solar Energy Industries Association, solar has experienced an average annual growth rate of 42%. The SEIA points towards tax credits and declining costs as drivers in the growing market. It seems like a win-win, right? Better for the environment than traditional energy supplies and cost-saving to boot. But is it all it's cracked up to be? Solutionaries correspondent Joel Eisenbaum helps us sort through all things solar.
It's quiet, it's clean, it's renewable, it lasts, and there's no moving parts.
All right, so what makes a house a good candidate for solar?
Well, let's launch the drone and let's see what this house looks like from the air. You want a good south-facing exposure of the roof, no trees, no obstructions, how the sun hits that roof. Southern facing is the best spot for solar, then you can go west, east.
I'm staring at this power pole right here. Is it possible to detach yourself from the grid and just go like this?
Technically, the way most houses are done, no.
Solar by itself does not continue to provide power to your home like a generator would. But if you couple it with a battery storage system, then it is capable of doing that.
So in Texas, obviously we have a lot of extreme weather, brownouts, blackouts, freezing weather, brutally hot weather. I've got a bunch of solar panels on my house. Are they reliable?
The solar itself is reliable, but it's relying on the grid. As long as the grid is up, the solar will operate.
What are we talking about in terms of upkeep for solar?
You don't really need to hire a company to get up there and clean them. God's gonna take care of that for you when it rains.
Okay, say I'm sold on this, I'm ready to go solar. What are the costs involved?
Solar panels, $20,000 on up to start a starter system for somebody. Batteries could start anywhere from a couple $1,000s all the way up to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Microinverters, HOA approval, permitting with the city, permitting with the utility.
Do you mind if I ask you how much this deal cost you?
It cost almost $60,000.
And do you think that's money well spent?
I think it is money well spent. I think it'll pay for itself, after we get these panels paid off. We do plan on living here for a long time.
Benefits of a solar co-op are we reduce barriers to going solar and we bring down, on average, the cost because it's a competitive bid process. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be out of league. The sun shines down on us all equally. Let's make the energy from the sun accessible for all.
Where else is solar out here? At the outdoor classroom, the solar ground mount is really here to educate and entice a community that, in other words, would never know. This system is running to some batteries over there, and when the grid goes down, because we've stored power in those batteries, that system is going to be running when everybody else is down. So I encourage battery backup, but it is a little bit more expensive.
Dory, why did you drag me out here? Where are we right now?
We are not quite in the middle of a 240-acre former landfill in Sunnyside, a neighborhood of Houston, south of Houston Central.
I mean, this place, literally underneath us, is a bunch of old garbage?
Literally underneath us is a bunch of old garbage.
And what do you intend to do here?
The goal with the city's support and the community's support, we are planning to restore the cover. Landfills should not have trees, and so we intend to restore the cover and put in a 50-megawatt solar farm. This project will become carbon neutral within year 5, And after that, it becomes a carbon sink. So it replaces the need for fossil fuels to generate that energy.
The energy that's developed right here is actually going to stay local.
That's correct. Electrons will go to the path of least resistance. So if someone needs them right next door, they'll go right next door.
What have your electric bills been like?
Our first bill that we got was $28.
Versus what were they?
$300–400 depending on how hot it is outside.
So say my solar panels are doing gangbusters. Am I actually getting a check cut to me from the electric company?
So depending on the plan that you're on, there are multiple companies that offer a net metering program. Different plans offer different buybacks, if you will. So when I first went solar, my first bill was a negative $45, but then it jumped to a negative $106, negative $194, negative $306. Green Mountain mailed me a check for $142.80. When was the last time the electric company paid you?
Joel Eisenbaum is joining us now from Houston. Joel, that was a great report. Tell us some of the ways that we can save money or even make money on solar panels.
Lewis, I think certainly homeowners have some opportunities here. First is from Uncle Sam. There's a federal tax credit. If you install a home solar system this year, that's a 26% tax credit. That's thousands of dollars back in your pocket. And then jurisdictionally, depending on where you live, you're putting money back into the grid. You could earn credits back that way, or sometimes even cash in your pocket. And also, you're improving your house when you put a home solar system in. And a lot of jurisdictions will not increase your valuation, so you can save money in property taxes as well.
And despite the possibility of saving or making money, going solar can be daunting. So tell us how some places are starting small.
Yeah, I mean, because this is a big outlay for a lot of people. It's $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to install one of these systems if you use a third-party company. But there are other solutions out there. In Houston, we have a solar co-op. And essentially, that is a way to buy in bulk, a bunch of neighbors getting together and then contacting a company, and they get big discounts. If you really want to go the DIY route, you can even get plans on the internet and a list of parts and try it yourself, although that can be a daunting task, Lewis.
You know, I don't know that I trust myself to do it myself. I'd rather just pay somebody. Joel Eisenbaum, thank you so much for that report. Still to come, Florida's coral reefs are under attack. A deadly disease is thriving in warmer waters, creating an uncertain future for marine life and the Florida coast.
It may not look like it right now, but urban heat islands exist. And here in Detroit, it's a big problem because more than half of the city is impervious. A lot of pavement and not enough green space. Coming up, a group here in Detroit working to reverse that with a plan to cool down the Motor City.
Welcome back to Solutionaries. We're taking a look at the creative people willing to fix climate-related problems in their communities. We've discussed cooler pavement and ways to combat heat islands within cities. And there are several ways to reduce temperatures. In Detroit, a group called Detroit Future City has an interesting plan. They're working to reverse the damaging landscape and to create environmental change within the city. And they are just one piece to the climate-saving puzzle. Solutionaries correspondent Grant Herms has the story.
We just left the station and there's already just kind of nothing but hard surfaces. Asphalt, we got sidewalks over here, we've got construction right here, we've got an empty lot over there, more parking over there.
We're kind of feeding into this loop of warmer days, warmer temperatures, and then with pavement and with buildings and concrete, all of that heat is absorbed, and then that exacerbates the climate situation. There's nowhere for that heat to go, in other words.
That's Nick Schruck, an environmental law professor at Detroit Mercy. What he's talking about is the heat island effect, and Detroit has some of the worst in the country. Concrete and asphalt are good at trapping heat from the sun, much more than grass. In one EPA study done at the peak of summer, pavement routinely hitting temperatures between 120 and 150 degrees, compared to grass, which has been shown to be sometimes 40 degrees cooler than pavement.
Part of the larger problem of having this very overdeveloped environment where we have, in many instances, a lot more pavement than we have people.
Just basically downtown Detroit. And you can just see parking lot after parking lot, and most of them right now are empty. It's the middle of a day right now. So you'd expect these to be full of people working, even if people are working from home, but there are just so many empty lots.
This map from the city of Detroit shows just how much of Detroit is pavement or hard surfaces that trap heat. More heat means more heat stress and sickness like heat stroke.
A lot of grass, a lot of trees, good drainage. This is the opposite of downtown Detroit.
A lot of experts like Vivek Chandas from Portland State University are looking at the effect of urban heat islands. In 2020, he conducted a study here in Detroit, and the results were alarming.
We went out and collected 131,000 air temperatures over one day. That was morning, afternoon, and evening. And that allowed us to really describe in never before seen detail what the difference is from one neighborhood to another, which ended up being about 11.5 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have a 95 degree place in the city, you have, in that sense, a 106 degree place in another part of the city. And then add on top of that, somebody living in a multifamily residential building who's on the third, fourth, fifth floor of that building, that temperature isn't 106 anymore. It goes up to 120, 125, maybe even 130 degrees in those upper floors of some of those buildings.
But it's not just the heat, it's also flooding. All that hard surface also means water doesn't soak into the ground and instead flows into sewers, ponds, and the Detroit River, taking with it all of the chemicals and trash that collect in parking lots and streets. And that can lead to real harm, like little Zeus here, whose owners in Dearborn got a $10,000 vet bill after he got sick from floodwaters.
Leptospirosis is a bacteria that comes from infected rodent feces. And unfortunately, because of all the flooding, it brought it into my backyard. It's very dangerous. It's dangerous to dogs. It's life-threatening. And it's also transmittable to humans.
Okay, so I know the sick puppy was kind of a cheap shot, but it's not just puppies, it's people too. In 2021, the Michigan State Health Department tracked a 569% increase in Legionnaire's disease linked to floodwaters and runoff. That can cause all kinds of nasty lung and respiratory problems, and it can be fatal.
But there have also been some groups pushing to change course and tear up the unused or overpaved places.
In Detroit, we have to grapple with the fact that we have 24 square miles of vacant land across the city, and not all of that is going to be built development. Some of it has to be green space.
I paid interest more so than just this whole end of stormwater management for what the department was saying.
One of those groups is Detroit Future City, an environmental group working on de-paving Detroit.
Those overpaved surfaces really heat up the neighborhoods that have less green space in them, and so de-paving is one of the ways that we can help combat that and really fight against those issues that are becoming more prevalent because of climate change.
The first project on Detroit's west side was at the St. Suzanne Cody Rouge Community Resource Center.
And then the third thing they become is a wildlife habitat,
where Steve Wasco has been a lifelong parishioner, now a project manager. He volunteered to de-pave 7,500 square feet of unused parking lot
it has to help the economy of the parish.
Turning it into green space.
We sit right in a neighborhood. As you can see, there are houses on all four sides of us, and you don't see any fences in that. We're wide open, and we really want to be an asset to the community for children to use the playground and for youth to use the basketball hoop and for others to come to the programs here. So anything that's more inviting. Broken up asphalt is not very inviting.
That's just a small example of how de-paving reshapes communities, but how much good it can do for the environment is even harder to tell because there aren't any big de-paving projects anywhere in the country right now. There is some evidence de-paving can work. In one EPA study, estimates show removing up to 10% of pavement from a city could mean as much as a 7-degree drop overall, the difference between life-threatening heat and a pleasant afternoon. And in Portland, Oregon, what is thought to be the model for de-paving, the group De-Pave Portland was able to reduce annual runoff by more than 15.8 million gallons since they started in 2009. But in the end, the idea really hasn't caught on.
The big question is the scale. Like, is it having an effect on the whole neighborhood, or is it having an effect on just that house adjacent to the place that's been de-paved? That's a bigger question that we're still spending time scratching our heads over.
But really, there's one big thing standing in the way: cars.
What will keep us healthy? What are the assumptions we're using in building these cities? And can we find ways to cast and socialize the concept of green space as healthy and important for us to really kind of admire and hold up as something that went from a car icon to a car and tree or green space icon? Like, we can hold those two things together.
Thanks, Grant. You can learn more about de-paving and the changes it's made at Solutionariesnetwork.com. Up next, here in Orlando, we're known for the happiest place on earth, Disney World, of course. It's a place for families and children to live their dreams, but it's not all picture perfect in Florida. The coral reefs are fighting for their lives, and Disney magic is desperately needed.
We're witnessing these coral reefs sliding into extinction. And as scientists, the last thing I want to do is say, we did a damn good job monitoring them into extinction. I'd rather say we did a damn good job in actually restoring them and bringing them back.
The Florida Coral Rescue Center is the largest facility of its kind in the United States. The center is working to provide a nurturing environment for coral colonies to receive world-class care and hopefully reproduce with the help of coral experts. Now, this is important because the coral reefs are currently under attack. Scientists are blaming warming temperatures for an environmental crisis. Warmer ocean water is helping fuel a deadly disease that has now attacked, get this, 95% of Florida's coral reefs. The coral is now at risk of extinction. So what can be done? Solutionaries correspondent Eric Sandoval shows us the massive effort that's underway.
On the outside, it looks like any other office building in one of Orlando's warehouse districts. But what's happening inside is a fast-moving mission to save a species. The Florida Coral Rescue Center houses 18 aquariums filled with more than 750 colorful corals, all of them rescued from the reefs, threatened by a mysterious, deadly disease.
So we believe the disease started around the Miami area, and it's been spreading, much like a wildfire.
Dr. Andy Stamper is a conservation science manager for Walt Disney World. Yes, that Walt Disney World. He says something called stony coral tissue loss disease has hit half the corals along the Florida Keys, and it's now targeting the Caribbean. The problem is scientists don't know where this disease came from, but they do know warmer ocean temperatures put stress on corals and make it easier for this bacteria to spread. So a team of wildlife experts has taken these corals from the wild to protect them and raise them here at the Rescue Center.
The federal and state governments felt that it was extremely important to take a small population out to bank to save it for future restoration efforts.
Stamper says 25% of creatures in the ocean depend on coral reefs for homes and food. The reefs also help protect Florida's coastline from strong hurricanes and the storm surge that comes with them.
And when we protect the shoreline, we protect tourism, we protect housing. They're incredibly important for Florida.
It's so important that a team of experts is now collaborating to protect the coral. Their group, the Florida Coral Rescue Project.
Well, it's a very unique partnership because
Jim Kinsler is the aquarium curator at SeaWorld Orlando, and he's the facilities manager for the Coral Rescue Center.
Zoological institutions like SeaWorld and Disney, we have the expertise of maintaining and keeping corals, coral aquaculture. This is right in our wheelhouse.
The partnership is led by the Association for Zoos and Aquariums, and it involves Disney Conservation and SeaWorld, the Fish and Wildlife Foundation of Florida, NOAA Fisheries, and Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
We've shown that we've been very successful holding the corals here.
Justin Zimmerman is an aquarium supervisor with SeaWorld Orlando.
The corals are growing, they seem to be very happy and doing well.
The Rescue Center simulates conditions as close to possible to natural conditions with LED lights, pumps, and about 6,000 gallons of salt water that has to be constantly managed.
That is the goal of this project, is to get all these corals and make the reefs down in the Keys pristine again. Is to get these corals back in the ocean.
Watching to see where this mysterious disease may spread to next, though, is a huge task. To get results, state environmental leaders here in the state of Florida have enlisted the help of literally anybody who is willing to dive out in these waters. They're given a form like this, and they're asked to fill out the condition that they find the corals in. And then they upload all of that to a state database.
All right, so everybody got their gear, everybody got their clipboards.
This group's name is Force Blue.
Have fun, dive safe.
Their mission this day, helping to save Florida's coral by diving to a reef off the coast of Lauderdale by the sea.
It impacts you because to see something like that happening right here in our backyard, it does make an impact on you.
Steve Gonzalez helps to spearhead Force Blue's involvement in the Florida Coral Rescue Project.
I am retired Navy SEAL Master Chief.
Gonzo, as his friends call him, says he's been on more than 100 dives to monitor the coral for signs of illness, life, and yes, death.
9 out of 10 times, this is caused by fellow humans. Sometimes on purpose, but mostly unknowingly. Plastics, plastic plays such an important part. Waste, things that we just don't think about until you're underwater and you see the impact of what it has on the coral reef, and then of course on the marine life that feeds off of that coral reef.
We're looking for coral disease, coral bleaching.
Veteran divers come here from all over Florida. Miami Dolphins wide receiver Mac Hollins even suited up. We watched as they formed 4 teams to search for 2 big threats facing Florida's coral: bleaching, which is caused by rising water temperatures, and stony coral tissue disease.
Do you know if it was stony coral tissue loss or something else?
It was, I can't say for sure.
Divers brought what they found to Patty Kirk Gross, who combined all of it and uploaded it to the Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
We are really, really close to a tipping point.
But she says she has faith that efforts like this may help turn things around and save the coral from extinction.
I don't think that we'll ever in my life be able to restore it to where it looks the same. It's going to always look different no matter what we do. But if we could just bring, especially the corals, back to where they would spawn and have a place to land and grow, that would make me happy.
The fight to save coral has even made it to Washington, D.C.
The Great Florida Reef is under attack.
Florida Congressman Darren Soto says he saw what's happening to the waning coral population off Florida's coast firsthand during a scuba trip to Key Largo.
It was a real personal moment because I see the decline of the Great Florida Reef and the sense of responsibility to help save it.
It impacted you?
No question.
and you just see the devastation.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio went on a similar trip to the same spot. These historical photos of that area in 1971 and 2004 show just how much things are changing. Coral is dying while plants are taking over. Soto, a Democrat, and Rubio, a Republican, put aside their political differences and teamed up to introduce identical bills in the House and Senate. If they're both passed, the Restoring Resilient Reefs Act would make available $53 million to national restoration efforts. $15 million of that would be earmarked for projects in individual states, like the Florida Coral Rescue Project, which has been sharing money and resources.
And so what we thought was really important is to strengthen NOAA's Coral Reef program, to allow it to partner with these local organizations and local communities, and to drive the level of funding necessary to keep that innovation going.
The bill would also provide technical assistance to nonprofits who are on the front lines of this rescue mission. But how much of that money each state would get still needs to be hammered out.
It sounds like federal funding is almost vital to continuing these efforts.
It is. It absolutely is.
Dr. Michael Crosby is the president and CEO of Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium in Sarasota. He says he helped Rubio's staff with the wording of the Senate bill, knowing that this isn't a simple fix. And saving Florida's coral, he says, will take years.
We're witnessing these coral reefs sliding into extinction. And as scientists, the last thing I want to do is say, we did a damn good job monitoring them into extinction. I'd rather say we did a damn good job in actually restoring them and bringing them back.
Solutionaries correspondent Eric Sandoval is joining us now. And Eric, this really is not a short-term project, is it?
Absolutely not, and primarily because it's a battle against Mother Nature on one point. You know, we have climate change, we have warmer ocean temperatures, and that's not going away anytime soon. And that's one of the big culprits for helping to spread this illness underwater so the coral get it. So that's number one. Number two, we have the human element. We have boat rotors that are going over the coral reefs, and that's injuring some of them, but we also have a lot of fertilizer that's literally being pumped into the Atlantic Ocean, and that's killing off a lot of the corals. So the answer to your question, no, it's not short term.
And there's really sort of been a national response to Florida's crisis. Tell us about how other states are getting involved.
Well, you know, Florida does not have the budget infrastructure to help save the corals, so they've basically had to go out to other states and ask for help. They are now sending propagated coral to places like Omaha, Nebraska, Detroit, Michigan, middle of Virginia, Iowa is another state. But all of these states and aquariums in those states are basically stepping up to the plate and saying, how can we help? So coral is literally being grown in the middle of a cornfield in some cases.
Eric Sandoval, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff. Now, the disease that we have been talking about has ravaged the coastal reefs of Florida and the Caribbean. The volunteers collecting data are essential for marine health and sustainability in those regions. And it's important to point out that reefs are all over tropical and even subtropical waters, including off the coast of Galveston, Texas. Organizations like the Galveston Bay Foundation, they help preserve the waters nearby. And you can learn more about volunteering for them and donating opportunities at solutionariesnetwork.com. Now, the coral reefs are getting help in another, more unconventional way. What started as a passion project for two friends turned into families being able to bury their loved ones at sea. A final resting ground that memorializes a life lived and fosters marine growth all at the same time. Solutionaries correspondent Lauren Verno introduces us to Eternal Reefs.
The loved ones we've lost, bringing new life to the sea. For a fallen police officer, that means a life of service, far beyond the badge.
So I want to be in a green Folgers can. I go, and I want to be a fishy house. You need to send me out there and somehow put me in there.
It was a conversation Carmony says she remembers vividly, having with her husband, Floyd East Jr., and one she never expected to fulfill so soon.
Can you take me back to that day and just tell me whatever you can?
Officer East has been in a confrontation. It did not go well. And then I said, is he okay? And then they said, ma'am, he has passed away.
In October 2017, Officer East responded to a call of a student acting erratically on Texas Tech's campus. While in police custody, that student pulled a gun, shooting and killing Officer East at 48 years old.
The girls and I just dropped to the floor as soon as they saw me. As soon as I saw them, we were on the floor crying.
As funeral preparations began, Carmen remembered that conversation she shared with her husband.
He said, "I want to be a fishy house. You got to make me into a fishy house."
What Officer East meant was he wanted to be an eternal reef.
Eternal reefs was started with the concept of trying to find a way to help preserve the ocean and the ocean environment for future generations, and at the same time find a memorialization opportunity.
Eternal Reef CEO George Frankel explains, instead of a loved one being buried in a plot or put in an urn, these concrete structures are mixed with loved ones' ashes, becoming an eternal reef. The reefs range in price from almost $4,000 to $7,500. And to date, 3,000 of these eternal reefs have been placed in 30 locations around the country.
How do you measure the success of a reef ball after you've put it out there? And how successful have you been?
In the right water conditions, we will see visible growth in as little as 6 weeks. So we know the contribution is there to begin with.
When you first heard about them, what went through your head?
Well, when I first heard about them, I thought, how cool.
Jacksonville University professor of marine science Dan McCarthy has been studying reefs for decades.
How is our reef ecosystem right now?
I think globally, the reefs aren't doing very well. We're seeing a transition from living coral to being dominated by algae and sometimes sponges.
And these reefs are bringing life back.
Fish are able to go inside it, as well as animals without backbones, invertebrates like crabs and shrimp and things like that. And then you end up having a sequence of events where small guys get in, larger guys get in, and then you end up a more vibrant community.
Is this really the perfect solution for saving our reefs?
I don't know that they're a perfect solution, but they are a solution.
You can see just by the growth on these reefs over the years, they are working.
Are these reef balls replacing the reefs dying in the same rate?
Oh, probably not. Almost definitely not. Reef balls are great, coral restoration are great, and I'm big fans of those. But, when you talk about the aerial coverage of reefs worldwide, that's just something very hard for us to make up for.
And McCarthy says not every reef placed will be successful.
I do some work in shallow water reefs where they don't quite fit very well. But I think in some of the deeper, or maybe some of the reefs more in the Caribbean, there's comparable topography associated with it. It's not perfect.
While it's not perfect, it's a stepping stone in giving back. Not just giving back to the ocean, but for the families who lost a loved one.
It's so poetic in a way. He served in life and he's serving afterlife.
I'm sure he's having a ball just watching the fish, and because he loved diving, and it was one of the things that he loved the beach. If he could live in a shack on the beach for the rest of his days, he would have been happy.
And Carmen is reminded of that every time she looks off St. Augustine shore, knowing 15 miles out, her husband is still there.
There are now 750,000 reef balls along the ocean floor of 70 countries. We welcome in City of Orlando Sustainability Director Chris Castro. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us. We have covered a lot of ground today. We've heard about heat islands, green roofs, cooler pavement, de-paving, switching to solar, and preserving coral reefs. So tell us, Chris, how does any of this help us move forward?
Well, each one of the things that you just mentioned are solutions to advance sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, it's really about ways in which we can minimize the impact that we have on the environment and on public health in our surrounding communities, right? Every action that we take, believe it or not, has either a positive or a negative impact on the planet and public health. And so each one of our day-to-day actions makes a big difference. When we're thinking about the energy and the water that we're consuming at our households, the food that we're purchasing and that we're buying, how we're disposing of our waste, and whether we're recycling and putting the food waste into the composter, right? And how we're getting to and from our work and our play, right? Transportation. Each one of these segments has an impact on the environment because the actions that we're doing are contributing to climate change through greenhouse gas emissions, through carbon emissions, right? And so if we can start to make changes like adding rooftop solar to our buildings, which minimizes the amount of fossil fuels that we're dependent on to actually power that building in the first place, right? Now we're starting to minimize the impact that we have on the planet, and we're starting to move towards a more sustainable, healthier, and cleaner future for Orlandoans and the world.
We appreciate that. So there's a lot that we can do every day.
Yes.
Are there any resources out there that you would like for people to know about?
City of Orlando on our website, orlando.gov/greenworks, has a incredible compilation of different resources, tools, as well as free opportunities for residents to begin moving towards sustainability. We offer free trees every single season. We have free composters for your backyard. We offer free rain barrels so you can actually capture rainwater from your rooftops and begin minimizing the amount of irrigation that's coming from potable water, right? In addition, our hometown utility, OUC, has some pretty tremendous opportunities for our residents and our businesses to begin looking at ways that they can save, not just the planet, but also their own pocketbooks, right? And so incentives, rebates, and other programs that OUC offer to help lower that energy use and at the same time contribute to a positive environmental footprint.
Sounds like there are plenty of resources out there.
Yes,
Chris
there are.
Castro, thank you so much. And thank you for watching Solutionaries. We want to remind you that you can find creative solutions to even more issues. Issues like police-community relations and the affordable housing crisis right now at solutionariesnetwork.com. You can also see more on our YouTube page. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And if you know of people solving issues in your community and think they should be highlighted, don't hesitate to email us at solutionaries@grammedia.com. We'll see you next time. Take care. Solutionaries needs you to be part of the conversation. Your comments below will help us tackle new topics and track down solutions. And don't forget to subscribe.